Good Monday morning of the fourth week in Ordinary Time. Actually, it's Wednesday the week before, and it's ugly out right now, and I'm sitting here. It's Wednesday, and I'm just sitting here, and I thought, gee, maybe I ought to do these videos now. I actually forgot. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be behind. Anyway, on this miserably cold, ugly afternoon, I decided I would do the readings today and then maybe reflect a little. And it's interesting, the Old Testament is really powerful. It's the book of Samuel. It deals with David, King David. And you know, David is one of the primary figures of the Old Testament. He ranks up there with Abraham, Moses. And Moses, I mean, he's a great king, powerful man, a man of enormous influence. But he's also a man of power. He's a king, King David. But he's a man of colossal humility and gentleness as well. He's a man who is wise. He's not a power broker, but he's a powerful man. And in the text we have today, it's from chapter 15 of the book of Samuel. You'll see it because he's confronted with the threat of his own son, Absalom's trying to kill him. And his fellow officers, David's fellow officers, want to eliminate the threat. And David won't do it. You could see he feels for his son. He loves Absalom. He loves him. Even though his son, maybe these guys play rough in the sandbox, and that his son is attacking him and seeking to kill him, kill his own father. See? Boy, they do it. They do play rough in the sandbox, I have to say. But I'll read it to you, okay? And you see his humanity. One thing is so beautiful about the Old Testament, I think, the Hebrew Bible. It is so human. I don't know how else to say it. They tell their stories about these great figures, and these figures are as flawed as they are magnificent. And I find looking at David, I find solace in it because he's also extremely flawed. But in a given moment, he is preeminently great, you see. That's what I think. I'm no Old Testament scholar at all. I barely ever read it, but when I read it, I'm struck by the humanity of it. Here's a good example. He says, I'll read it to you. He says, the children of Israel have transferred their loyalty to Absalom, that's his son. At this, David said to all his servants who were with him in Jerusalem, up, let us take flight, or none of us will escape Absalom. So he's talking about his kid. Leave quickly, lest he hurry and overtake us. Then visit disaster upon us and put this city to the sword. Boy, they play rough. As David went up the Mount of Olives, he wept without ceasing. His head was covered, and he was walking barefoot. That's a sign. Walking barefoot would be to be walked not just in humility, but I thought that's a route of a slave. Slaves walk barefoot. And there's Lily trying to protect the world. And all those who were with him also had their heads covered and were weeping as they went. So he's leaving grieving, you see? I think that's the point of the barefoot. As David was approaching Baharan, I think is how you say that, a man named Shimei, the son of Gera, of the same clan as Saul's family, was coming out of the place, cursing as he came. And he doesn't mean cussing, he means cursing, wishing harm, okay? He threw stones at David and all the king's officers. And even though all the soldiers, including the royal guard, were on David's right and his left, Shimei was saying as he cursed, away, away, you murderous and wicked man. The Lord has requited you for all the bloodshed in the family of Saul, in whose stead you became king. And the Lord has given over the kingdom to your son Absalom. And now you suffer ruin because you are a murderer. That's what the guy is saying to him. Abishai, son of Zeruiah, I think how you say his name, said to the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord and king? Let me go over, please, and lop off his head. Now, this is where David is so phenomenal. Watch what he says. But the king replied, what business is it of mine or of yours, son of Zeruiah, that he curses? Suppose the Lord had told him to curse David. Who then will dare to say, why are you doing this? Then the king said to Abishai and to all his servants, If my own son who came from my loins is seeking my life, how much more might this Benjamite do so? Let him alone. Let him curse, for the Lord has told him to. Perhaps the Lord will look upon my affliction and make it up to me with benefits for the curses he is uttering this day. David and his men continued on the road, while Shimei kept abreast. He kept abreast of them on the hillside, all the while cursing and throwing stones and dirt at him as he went. See, this guy is the Benjamin. That's Saul's tribe. He is cursing David for having Saul killed and taking his kingship from him. See, it's interesting. He is an enemy. The Benjamite is a real enemy, but at the same time, David is patient. There's something extraordinary about David. The guy says, well, maybe God is punishing me for what I've done. Isn't that something? He's an enthralling character. He's a powerful figure in the scriptures. I think the leadership of the Jews throughout the Old Testament are colossal figures. Look at Moses or Abraham. Their faith, their courage, their determination, etc. I was thinking as I was looking at this thing this afternoon, this text, I thought, no wonder so many Jewish families named their child David. I think they would absolutely hope he would have a Davidic heart. I know I would. David is a magnificent human being, a man of faith and trust and courage, a man of complete fidelity to God and to his people, and yet a man of colossal, as it were, humility. He knew he existed as king by the power of God and the protection of God. Not that he deserved it, but that God called him. I think that's the right way to put it. Would that the leadership of the world had the humility and strength of David. I mean, he's a model of leadership because he is colossally gifted and talented and powerful, but he's equally humble. He's equally humble. And it's not a fake humility, it's profound. He knows who he is. He knows who called him. He knows he's to lead, but he knows in the end who is the leader. As Moses is led across the desert, so is David in his kingship. That's the model. David is a model of leadership. Power with humility, not the arrogance of power, but the humility of power. He's a great king, the great Davidic king. Yeah, David, the ultimate king of Israel. You know, Solomon will follow his son. But Solomon, as wise as Solomon is, he's also flawed in a way that David is not. Even when David sins, he's repented from the heart. Solomon's supposedly wiser, but I don't really think so. You saw the wisdom of Solomon. I'll take the wisdom of David any day of the week, because David saw what was true and good and bad, first in himself, and then why. David is a magnificent figure. That's the truth. I have to say, I would put David at the peak of the Jewish heroes, although it's hard not to look at Moses. Talk about guts and leadership, humility and power. Wow. See? Anyway, just thinking, this is the text today. So just a thought.